Welcome to the Dear Brother Podcast, my friends. It's good to be back with you guys today, man. I'm so honored by all the new subscribers and everybody who's been a part of the podcast. You guys are brilliant, man, and it's an honor to serve you all. We have a great interview today, man, with Nathan Bourne. This guy has a story and a half. He's a businessman. He's been an athlete. Most of all, I wanted to bring him on here because he believes in empowerment and the purpose. Purpose is something we talk about a lot. This guy is fully aligned with the vision, man, of what we're doing. And I'm honored to have him. I read his story. I'm not going to read a big bio and all that. He has a story for you. And I have some great questions for him, man. We're going to dig in today. It's an honor to have him, man. And I want to welcome our friend, our brother. I want to welcome him in, my brother, Nathan Bourne, man. We're going to have a good time today. Hey, Nate, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm well, man. It's good to have you on. I was looking forward to this podcast. You said your COO reached out right on Messenger,
Yeah,
and he shot me your bio, man. I said I got to get this guy on, especially because you deal so much with purpose, with the mission of purpose, and that's big for men's lives. I think
man.
that's one of the biggest reasons why men have so much trouble these days is because they can't get in touch. They can't locate their purpose. They can't locate it.
Yeah,
And so when I saw that was big to you, man, I said I got to have you, man. So it's a pleasure to have you, man. Thank you for getting up early with me
yeah.
and doing this interview. How you making out today, man? How was your week?
Well, yeah, doing well. It's been a good week. I've been fighting a little bit of a sickness, so if I'm over here coughing, forgive me. I've got 5 kids. They go to 3 different schools. It's just like a petri dish, constantly flowing through. And I do well, man. I'll go years without getting sick. It's been, I don't know. I think I got COVID in like 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even test that, but I know I got it because all my food tastes changed. And um, but this one hit me. It's been like 3 weeks, so something's going around. I think it's like COVID 25, but nobody's talking about it.
One's talking about it, man. It's something. My son just came home from spring break, and as soon as I picked him up, he's coughing and hacking in the truck. I said, "Oh man, let's get you, let's get you going, man." So
Yeah,
it
I've
is
been
something going
coughing.
around, man.
I
Um,
was not much of a like. I never smoked or drank, but the few times that I did, I was that guy that would be like dying coughing. That's how I felt. People think I'm like smoke. I'm like, I'm not smoking. I just I'm like dying over here, like I just took a bong hit or something. But anyway,
well, I'm glad you're fighting your way through the bong hit, man. To be with
right, the bong hit of life.
yeah, man. Um, so let's get into it, man. I read your story, man. I spent some time, man, about maybe 2 or 3 hours last night because
Wow.
your story is so heavy.
Yeah.
And I know you have so much to give, man. We're going to take a journey today. We're going to take a journey of your life. And then we're going to walk that journey right into how you are empowering people, man, your business, your pursuits. But I want the audience to really glean from you heavy today, man, on your journey, things you've learned and all. Let's get into this, man. You
Yeah.
were the fourth of 9 children.
Still am. Yeah. Yeah, man.
Sheesh.
Big family.
Yeah. So growing up in such a large family that way, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you said you guys grew up poor.
Yeah, mad poor, dirt poor. Yeah. Like
So
poor, poor. Yeah.
four
Real.
of nine,
Yep.
dirt poor.
Yeah.
Were there moments in your life that you realized that like survival wasn't enough for you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's some factors to it. I've had to process this quite a bit. I'm 36, so I left for college at 17, turning 18 in the fall. So I'm at this interesting place where I'm like half and half, like half my life in the home and half my life, adulting. Um, but really, we had to grow up fast.
Mm,
The elements of our life, the circumstances of our life, didn't really afford much of a childhood. So I, I I can remember vividly by age 9, 10 at the latest,
hmm
like starting to really have to figure it out, and one, I had all these younger siblings.
hmm
So it was a combination of that, and then just the reality of us being this kind of wolf pack. My parents got married at 18 and 19 years old,
Okay.
right? And some kind of fun facts on the big family. My oldest brother is 43.
Mm-hmm.
He turned 43 in November. My youngest brother turned 22 in November. So there's a 21-year span,
Wow.
9 children, no twins, same parents.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's 22 grandchildren. My parents just turned 62 and 63 years old. Isn't that great? Yeah, this ain't 100 years ago. This is like now,
Right,
right?
right,
You
right
talk to
there.
our grandparents, oh yeah, I'm the fifth of 12, but
Yeah.
as a millennial, that's wild. Speaking of, my oldest brother is a Gen X.
Hmm.
Then several of us are millennials, and then several of us are Gen Z. So in one family, we've got 3 generations
Wow.
of types of people, 3 generations in the sense of like, Gen X, millennial, and Gen Z.
Right, right. So I'm sure there are some very interesting conversations that happen when you have all these different generational approaches to how life goes. And
Right.
so I'm sure there's some disagreements, maybe some arguments, maybe it's a whole lot of stuff going on, huh?
Yeah. People ask me all the time, like, are you close with your family? Is your family close? And the way we grew up, big family in small spaces, like, yeah, we were real close, like 4 people in a room close,
Yeah.
like mattresses laid out in the living room close.
Mm-hmm.
The part that makes the story is kind of what I was alluding to with having processed it now about as long, and it's not like it ever finishes, right? I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
just keep sorting through it. Um, so there's a few components that make it unique as I've tried to make sense of all of it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's like the Bourne family, there's like that entire unit, that dynamic. And then there's like the Nathan Bourne component. And I don't want to say this to sound like I'm special or something, but
Mm-hmm.
as far as just the choices I've made and the way that I live,
Mm-hmm.
the world that I live in, I'm the only one that lives the way that I live. And I don't necessarily mean that as far as like success,
Mm-hmm.
but just sort of like my approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so there's that. That's kind of a uniqueness within a uniqueness. But I'll share this piece because
Sure.
it's an important, I think, part of the context for the story.
Mm-hmm.
My parents, typically when you think about poverty, it's
Mm-hmm.
a generational thing, right? History repeats itself, and the wealthy stay wealthy, the poor stay poor, and typically people live what they learn,
Yeah.
right? So to break free from that is really, really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
What's odd is that my parents were like first generation poor. So their parents, they weren't rich or anything, but they were middle, even I'd say my dad, interestingly, who he's kind of the culprit,
Mm-hmm.
it was upper middle class, highly educated. They lived in a nice part of Maryland. So something about the pressure that my grandfather, my father's father, put on him to
Mm-hmm.
be successful
Yeah.
because he was sort of Wonder Boy. He was a star athlete. He went to a private school. My dad, if I showed you a picture of him, he looks like if Mel Gibson and George Clooney had a baby. I mean, he's somewhere in between Mel Gibson and George Clooney.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a stud. He's 6'2". He's in great shape, even at 63 years old. And he was the number one recruit in the country for soccer in the 80s, went to the University of Connecticut, which was the number one school, Division One, and
Mm-hmm.
he left after a month, married my mom. They moved to Maine, built a log cabin without any running water, and started a family and ended up having 9 children, and that's how the story goes. So I'll just pause right there. But the part I wanted to finish with
Yeah.
is we grew up to physically attractive, well educated white people parents, right?
Right.
So we
Right.
had white privilege,
Mm-hmm.
pretty privilege. We were athletically, all of us are athletes.
Mm-hmm.
We were involved in our church, involved in our communities. We had all this social capital. And then
Mm.
we'd go home and the electricity has been off for a month,
Mm,
right? Where we don't even have heat. There's
mm.
barely enough food. That there's one car that you're barely's making it, and you may or may not be able to take it from point A to point
Yeah,
B.
yeah.
So it was really, really challenging because we weren't like sure where we stood because we weren't in a ghetto or a trailer park. We were around affluence, but we were poor, but we didn't look poor. So that's a really unique situation.
Absolutely. So carrying the image of having something,
Hmm.
right? That must have been something to your psychology then. I mean, you're in your mind. How do I? Because a lot of people have to. It's important in this world to a lot of people. I think you have to get free from it at a certain point to
Right.
have an image,
Right.
right? So here you are. You have this image. You have this privilege. You have this pretty. You have it going on. What did it do to your psyche to go out and know that people looked at you in a certain light, but you knew you were going home to a certain dark? What did
Right.
that do to you inwardly, emotionally, mentally,
completely
socially?
completely messed me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, all jokes aside, it well, when you're in it, you're a kid, you're an
Mhm,
adolescent, you're a
mhm,
teenager, and you're just navigating and trying to keep up. But it's not like a keep up with the Joneses. It's pretty basic stuff. So like where a peer of mine, for them to get their girlfriend a corsage is like mom hands it to him on the way out the door.
right.
That was a real task for me. Like I had to figure out how the
Mhm,
hell am I going to come up with $30 on top of what I've already had to do. So, you got scrappy, man. And this is really how I ended up becoming an entrepreneur or a successful one because I knew how to build on shoestring everything.
mhm,
I would go to Marshall's, I would get a suit and or a jacket really, a shirt and a tie, and I knew that if I took that blazer and
mhm,
just tucked the tag,
mhm,
took it off and kind of hung it before I got dancing and sweating at the dance, I could return that the next day.
mhm,
And I
mhm,
did. I'm not spending $70, $80, which was still cheap for a blazer, but when you're a high school kid with no money and no parents that have any money, and I'll tell you what was really hard for me, Christian, was because I chose academia,
mhm,
academics and athletics. We grew up in Ocean City, Maryland, most of our life, particularly around these formative years.
mhm,
And there's so many ways to make money in that town as a kid because you can be a busboy, you can deliver food, you can work in a restaurant. So a lot of the ways we survived was because we worked. We all worked to make money, and
right.
then we would help our parents from some of that. But it was hard because I needed to make money, but
Mhm,
I also knew that was a short-term solution to a long-term problem because my mom is still waitressing. You know what I mean? And I'm
right.
going, all right, so how do I navigate getting to that wrestling camp, going to that tournament, making sure that I have my studies? So when I was in school, I didn't work because it was school, all day, every day.
Yeah.
It was homework. It was, I just became an absolute perfectionist. I had straight A's. I remember getting a 97 in a class and being
Mhm,
pissed about it,
mhm,
going like, what happened? So
yeah.
I overcorrected
Mhm.
and became like psychotic about it because I wanted out of that situation that badly.
And that was going to be my question. Was that perfectionism driven by that? This is the car that's going to get me out of here, and it can't break
Totally.
down, it can't slow down, it can't have a glitch. Let,
Yeah.
let me let me ask you this. Out of all the different experiences, I mean, we talked about the poverty, we talked about the things you go through, the mattresses on the floor,
Right.
and I'm sure it's 100 other things that you have suffered and gone through and had to figure out. What was that switch? Was it a situation? Was it a certain instance or circumstance? What was the switch that flipped that said, I I'm going, not only I have to, but I am going to aim for something higher than where I am? Like, was it a certain moment, a certain
Yeah.
circumstance that drove
Yeah.
you
A
there?
season. Yeah. I could give you a little story there, I guess. So, here's the challenge too, right? And I've talked about this with my siblings because there's these like little inflection points in the journey. Um, for my college essay, um, to get into Penn,
Mm-hmm.
it it had a question. When was a time that you had faced adversity and how did you overcome it? I was like, I got this. I was like, you sure? I'm about to write a book.
Right. Yeah. You want 20 pages or 40?
Right. So I thought, you know what? I'm 17 years old. I'm applying to Penn, and because of wrestling, it was kind of a shoe in, but it's a very difficult school to get in academically. So I had to, put my best foot forward. And I had already done all the work up to that point to have the GPA and the SATs and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought, how am I going to write this paper? How am I going to tell my story? Because I'm going to be going to school with the best and the brightest, the people from all over the world that are the cream of the crop to go into these Ivy League schools. And because I had a lot of experience in acting as if, and blending in, and
Mm-hmm.
people would have never known. I mean, I'll never forget my first girlfriend, my junior year of high school, her senior year. We started, seeing each other and hanging out and going to events.
Mm-hmm.
And that was easy because we were at other people's nice homes and we were at the school dances and we were at the school sports events. And I was kind of a star. I was captain of this and, homecoming king and, all the things
Mm-hmm.
that you can peak in high school with. And then it kind of came time for her to like come into my world, right? Like, okay, you're going to come over for dinner or something. And I said to her, I was like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but like my family's kind of like, we're like poor. And she was kind
Mm-hmm.
of like, what? Like that doesn't make, what I mean? Like people around here aren't poor. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, but like people around here are poor. You just don't know any of them.
Right.
Like
Right.
you don't talk about there's pockets, right? And just
Right.
like anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be in the inner cities of Philly or New York to find poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And she was kind of like brushed it off, like she didn't even know what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then she came over, right? And she saw the way that we lived and the home that we lived, and look, we weren't savages. It was
Right.
still well kept. My
Yeah.
mom kept it clean, but it was a whole bunch of nothing. You know what I mean? It's like we barely had furniture. We barely
Mm-hmm.
had, think just certain things that you don't you normally have, your basics. And I'll never forget because it was a moment for me where I probably started to deal with it
Yeah.
actually, where she was like so it was a great time. Everything. She's like, I love your family. She's like, Nathan, you really are poor, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, like I know, like I know, like I was trying to tell you, like, that's what I've been trying to tell you, and it was like she was like concerned, and it was like the most like privileged teenage white girl thing you could ever think, which was like we need to get involved. And it was like no, there's
Missionary
nothing.
work.
Exactly. Like I think she might have went to her parents and been like, "Can we give Nathan and his family some money?" It's like, no, we can't do that. Yeah, I'm gonna throw a fundraiser or some shit, like a gala for the Bournes. Oh, that's sick, but true. I'm telling you, that's what it looked like. She was like, "Oh, we gotta fix this." Like, bro,
No.
I've been trying to fix it.
Right. All my life.
Like, what do you think? How you think I'm the man at school? Like,
So that is a big switch, and I understand how like you can get used to a certain thing in your life, and you can wrap your arms around it and say, okay, this is life. But I guess that is a big switch when you have to bring someone in to see it who has no clue about it.
right.
How that can be a switch. Let me get to this
And
because
here's what's wild, just to,
yeah,
to
yeah, sure, sure,
properly answer your question, so I
sure.
don't go down too many rabbit holes. But that was at 7. That was at 16.
Okay,
I actually had the moment at like age 10.
tell me about it.
Yeah. So the point I was getting at that actually, thanks for getting
Mhm.
me back on track,
Sure,
was that
sure.
had my parents, so the first, I can only say from my point of view, the first like 10 years of my life, which would have been from 1988 to 1998. So like
Okay.
those years, that
Yeah.
decade, my parents still kept us off the grid. We were homeschooled. We
Okay.
lived on a farm that we care took, so they didn't even pay the rent for it. They just sort of kept up with the land, and we hunted and we cut down trees and sold it for firewood. I, dude, I was such an entrepreneur, and I look back at those memories sometimes and think like, yeah, I did that, and then I'm like, wait, dude, I would have been like 8 years old when I was doing that. So I
Mm,
was cutting lawns because we lived on this piece of land that was right next to this suburban area.
mm,
And we could like leave the land and then go into like this suburban area. And I would go cut lawns. And I started Nathan's Lawn Care. I'll never forget. I
mhm,
printed off on like clip art
mm,
these, things, put a house number,
mhm,
and I went door to door.
mhm.
And I look back at that and I went, dude, I was like 8 years old.
Yes.
Like imagine an 8 year old today coming to your doorstep and saying, I will cut your lawn, shovel your snow,
Mhm,
like do whatever. There was a thing called Sunshine Sales Club. I don't even know how this is legal,
mhm,
but it was these catalogs that they would send out, and you could essentially sell
mhm,
their products. And it was like candles, greeting cards.
mhm.
I'll never forget. It was like uh what is that, like brittle, it's like this like candy, it's awful, it's got like peanuts in it, and a
Yes.
peanut brittle, it's
Peanut
literally called peanut
butter.
brittle.
Yeah, that is bad.
Yeah, peanut brittle.
Mhm,
So here's what was interesting about that system. You would go out and get orders, and then they would ship you the products,
mhm.
and then you had to deliver the products to their home, right?
Yeah.
And you made your money in the interim.
Mhm,
Bro, I'm like a kid, like an actual child doing this. And
mhm.
I've got a bunch of siblings, and one of them gets into the peanut brittle. And I'm like, yo, like, don't mess with my inventory.
Right,
Like,
right.
this is my
It's
business.
my supply right here.
Right. Don't get high on your own supply. Right. Like, this is
Exactly.
my dude. And I was doing that. So when somebody's like, oh, I don't know to make the call. What if I get rejected? I'm like, bro, I was going door to door as a child,
Yeah.
slinging peanut brittle
Yeah.
to make money, because I knew that my parents were not going to be able to get us Christmas gifts, that they weren't going to, like, if I wanted something,
Mhm.
I was going to have to go get it.
Yep.
So it was really early on in those years. And then it was really, really when I went to school for the first time. They put me in school in
Mhm.
seventh grade.
Okay.
I had never seen the inside of a school. I'd never been inside a school before. And
Mm.
I wasn't really homeschooled. I was more like no schooled, with a little bit of this and a little
Yeah,
bit of
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was ill prepared.
Mhm.
And I just got like a rude awakening that was like, you know what? If I don't change this, I'm going
Mhm.
to be in real trouble.
Mm.
And that's when I locked in, and that's when the perfectionism occurred. And there's some crazy stories within that too, man, but I don't want to just go all over the place. So I would say it was like age 10 where I knew I've got to find a path to be successful, or I'm going to be set up for some serious failure.
Now, it's interesting. I was a snow guy too. I was out there,
Yeah.
10 years old, call a friend, "Hey, man, let's lock down this block."
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Competitors come in, you hold the shovel, like, let's go.
Not
Right.
today, buddy.
Right.
I get it. What was, as that 4th child,
Uh-huh.
and you talk a lot about the family and, holding things down for your parents, trying to help your parents, and what was the weight of being an example? I wanna talk about that a little bit. The weight of being an example, even though you're one of them and you're not the oldest, like you're somewhere in the middle. But talking to you, you seem like you took the weight of being that older
Yeah.
kid, and I gotta do this and I gotta do that. Um, did you feel the pressure to be an example? Um, did it sometimes, on the other hand, make you feel like you wanted to rebel against those expectations because you were a kid? How did that dynamic shape your life and the man you've become?
Yeah, man. Um, it's not a past tense thing. It's a current thing.
Okay.
It's So I have a lot of back issues. I broke my back when I was 14. They told me I would never play sports again.
Mhm,
I have been in car accidents, so I have some major back issues to this day. I still work out through it, get chiropractic, all this stuff.
mhm,
So my family also has like these back issues. And the way I say it, I said, yeah, it's from carrying the weight of the world, right? So when you ask about the weight, it's the weight of the world. And I don't mean the world is in secular, I mean the whole damn thing.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's all of the above. It's
mhm,
heavy duty. And I think when you have that, I mean, trauma is probably the word that I would have never known to call it that,
mhm,
but
mhm,
now, and I struggle honestly because I'm not as I appear, bro. Like I look a certain way, I speak a certain way, but inside of me, there's a caged animal, right? Because I know the fight and the fray and the battle that is life.
mhm,
And most white guys in their 30s that have hair like this have no clue, what that is.
mhm,
So I found ways to channel it though. And this is, I think, the lesson in it.
mhm,
I created boundaries. So where there were moments I wanted to curb stomp somebody in a back alley or beat the shit out of somebody, you know, in a schoolyard,
mhm,
I realized on the football field I could just crush people and get rewarded for it. On a
mhm,
wrestling mat, I could dominate somebody,
mhm,
get my hand raised, and get a scholarship for it.
yeah,
So essentially, I channeled it all. I
mhm,
channeled it into my studies, I channeled it into my athletics, and I built disciplines
mm,
around it. And I think that
mhm,
that's the name of the game because if you don't have an ability, then you don't even have a sword to sheathe, right? And you mentioned something earlier that I think is important about the masculine journey and about men.
mhm,
Men are designed, I think people are designed, but men
mhm,
absolutely designed by God to do
mhm,
hard shit.
yes,
And the challenge is we live in 2025 where we work from home and I mean, like, look, our big challenge this morning was getting the volume to work on the podcast. Like,
mhm,
oh man, will it just, that's not a saber toothed lion,
no,
that's not caveman stuff.
mhm,
So I think the reason why depression's at an all time high, why people are addicted to antidepressants and to pills and to alcohol and pornography and why people are wandering generalities is because they're not doing things that are hard enough,
yeah,
right? And
mhm,
it's like, how do you find the hard, the challenge, the fight in a world that's pretty damn easy? This is America, right? I mean, it doesn't get
mhm,
much easier than this. So that's something that I think you find when you get in touch with your identity
yeah,
and you tap into your purpose. And we can talk more about that,
sure,
but I am thankful
mhm,
because the natural elements and circumstances of my life
yeah,
built and forged into me this resilience and this fortitude and this like ironclad mentality that I think sometimes and I go, as brutal as that was, I like who I am. I'm
yeah,
thankful for who I am
yeah,
and I wouldn't trade it. But there's a lot of trauma in there. There's a lot of pain in there.
absolutely, and um, I think that the fight is always there for men. I think that it's not really hard to find the fight. I think it's hard to find men who will accept the fight.
That's good. You're right.
I think a lot of guys, choose to go around it. It's like, okay, I'll just choose this addiction, or I'll
Right.
just choose rage, or I'll just
Yep.
choose whatever. I think that's the issue, is that it's hard to find men who will say, you know what, let me take this on. Let me
Yeah.
let me take this on. Um, I'll just share a little bit of listen, I didn't start this podcast because I was looking for likes. you know,
Right.
I started this podcast because there's some unbelievable things that I've had to suffer, and um, I know there's other men out there who who have the same struggles or trying to figure it out, feel rejected, can't figure it out. I um I lost my child. I lost a
Oh,
baby, and I did her eulogy.
Jesus.
I pastored for 26 years, so my dad and her died 4 months apart. My dad was 59. Mom died 3 years later, 62, 10 months, cancer, gone. So within a 4 year span, I lost a father, a mother, and a daughter.
Jesus.
I had and eulogized
Literally.
all three. I had to face that. I had to face that. Did I want to go grab a bottle and say, you know what? Let me just drown these
Right.
tears in this bottle? Did I want to go get some weed, roll up a blunt, and say, you know
Right.
what? Let me blow my problems away? I could have done that. And I was pastoring at the time, church planning at the time. So it's like, how do so I think the battle's there. And even whether it's a tragedy like that,
Right.
or whether it's just someone in your face that makes you that day, a hard day at work that makes someone's trying to bring the beast out of you.
Yeah.
I think that you can choose to face that battle, and you've
I
chosen to
think
face.
you're right, man. I kudos. I mean, one, that's nuts. And one, we gotta assess our lives, because I can guarantee you that nobody would trade any of their problems that they have with what you just shared. Like none of it, not even close. So the comparison game doesn't do it though, right? If you
Oh,
say, "Oh, well, look, that person has it worse or that person has it
no,
better."
no,
And a lot of times it's funny, the comparison game, it implies that you're comparing yourself to people that have it better than you. The
right,
real danger, and what most people do, is they compare themselves to people that have it worse than them,
right.
right? And that's where they create the habit loop to
Hmm.
stay complacent, or to
Right.
stay to get stuck. And I love my parents dearly, and my mom had to deal with a lot, so I have a lot of grace for her.
Hmm.
But that was her coping mechanism.
Hmm.
Every time that we would get kind of real about it,
Hmm.
either then or now, looking back, her default has always been, well, we stayed together, or these people act that way, or those people. And it was like, mom, stop. Like,
Yeah.
stop with that crap, because that's not an excuse
Yeah.
to not better your life. God
Right.
gave you the faculties, gave you the resources, gave you the connections,
Yeah.
and we have to steward these things, right? It's
Yeah.
all a game of capacity. It's not a construction thing. And I
Right.
think men think in terms of, oh, I need to build, I need to construct, I need to erect. And it's like, nah, dude, you need to steward and create capacity so that God can pour out more and trust you and entrust you
Hmm.
with more.
Yes.
So anyway, you're getting me fired up and kind of centered in this moment, because you're right. There's plenty of fight to be had, whether that's the fight of not popping off,
Hmm.
the fight of really all the things that you say
Hmm.
no to.
Yes. Yes. And and sometimes the biggest fight or the biggest no you have to stand on is the no to yourself, or the no to your weaknesses.
Yep.
The no to, I'm not going to become what I can become. I'm going to become what I'm able. That's sometimes the biggest fight
And
that you.
it's biblical. We have to deny ourselves,
Yeah.
pick up our cross, and follow Him. Right? Like it's a 3-step process. ABC 1, 2, 3. This is simple. It's not easy, but
No.
it's simple. You deny your earthly desires, you
Mhm.
deny the flesh, you pick up that cross, and we all have a different cross to bear,
Yeah.
and we don't entirely get to choose it. Now, there is cause and effect. There
Hmm.
are things in my life to this very moment
Hmm.
that I get to enjoy the fruit of because I did the work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't even finish at Penn, but
Hmm.
I get the brand of the Ivy League. I get the brand of the University of Pennsylvania, and I don't even have the degree. I've got a pennant on my wall that says Penn. I don't have a big degree,
Hmm.
but instead I put this flag to the company I founded in the frame that normally the degree goes in, right? So I don't know which one's better. I'll take both. So, but I say that to say that it's an interesting combination and sort of tension between the cards that are dealt to you,
Mm-hmm.
good, bad, ugly,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that it's really the serenity prayer, right? It's what are the things I can control,
Yep.
what are the things I can't control, and God help me to know the difference, right? Give me the
Yeah.
wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Because man, look, you probably heard it before. What 10% of life is what happens to you. 90% is how you handle it. You
That's
know.
right.
Let me get back, man. Because look, we could be on here for three,
I
four
was gonna
hours.
say, yeah, we're gonna be a while. Yeah, you keep
um,
ripping.
let me let me get into the wrestling mindset. Right. Let me get into the wrestling mindset because
Yeah.
you're a wrestler, because you're a D1 athlete. I'm a boxing fan.
Oh, right
And
on.
so it's one of the toughest sports, wrestling, especially. My cousin was a wrestler in high school, and the things I would see him do to his body just to prepare, I'm like, dude, is this legal? You know?
Yeah.
And the guy was, I mean, bull strong. Even now, man, he can get 100 pounds fat and say, "Oh yeah, I'm done with this." And 5 months
Um,
later, he's like,
yep.
I'm like, dude. So that's a mindset. That
Oh
that's
yeah.
a that's a certain mindset. Um, what lessons from even your wrestling career
Yeah.
have carried you through certain life circumstances, especially as an entrepreneur and a leader?
Yeah, man. I'd love to talk about this. Thanks for asking
Of course,
that.
man.
Yeah, this is it. Here's the thing too, like we've got to be careful to not take wisdom
Hmm.
and generalize it and think that it doesn't have layers and depths to it. So,
Mm.
for example, the very word mindset, that was something that as wrestlers we were constantly talking about. We talked about mental toughness. We talked about mentality. We talked about mindset. And nobody else talked about this. It wasn't happening in school. It
Hmm.
wasn't happening in conversations. And there wasn't social media at the time to pump out all these pontificators that are, this, ice cold plunge this and, hustle culture that. So,
Hmm.
what I think people do, particularly now, is you've got a whole generation, you've got a whole cohort population of men that are privy to and savvy to mindset, but they only know it at the most surface level because it's now part of the collective conscious. It's now part of their news feed. It's now a
Hmm.
day in the life. It's no big deal to hear a person talk about it, but they don't know what that actually means.
Yeah.
And what it actually means is you do something with it. So as a wrestler, a big part of the sport is cutting weight, right? It's
Hmm.
you can't avoid it. I mean, maybe heavyweights, but it it's all relative. So if you don't cut the weight, you're going up against a guy that's normally 15 to 20 pounds heavier than that, right? So you could stay your natural weight, but how's that going for you, right? I
Right.
mean, you get your ass whooped.
Right.
So we had no choice but to cut the weight.
Hmm.
So before you even got on the mat and did the very physical athletic thing that is wrestling, you had to deny yourself its most basic needs,
Hmm.
food and water. And then you would weigh in, and it's not like boxing where you box the next day.
Right.
You're within an hour, you're on the mat, dude. Right? I mean, you'd have like a 7 a.m. weigh in and 8 a.m. the tournament starts. Here's the worst part: the next day you got to weigh in again. Right? You might have a 3-day tournament. And in college, it's scratch weight. In high school, they give you a pound, they give you a little bit of grace. But what would happen is if you don't pay attention, you've wrestled 2 or 3 matches, you've been drinking water, you've had your sandwich, you've had your rice cakes, you've wrestled all day. You step on the scale and you're like, shit, I have to lose 5 pounds tonight. So you go back to the hotel and cut weight to then wait. And the sport is as much about cutting weight as it is about wrestling another human being in front of everyone.
I want to say this. I want you to get right back to it, but that's such a powerful life principle. Is that success in life is much more about preparation than the stage, man, than any of us. And we pay too much attention to the stage and not enough to the prep and not enough to the losing of our own wills. Oh, that's powerful, man. Please keep going.
Dude, you're absolutely right. And here's the thing to consider. I'm enjoying this conversation, man,
My
because
man.
this is fun for me. Normally, I'm in your seat, and I bite my tongue. I'm talkative, so I'm like, man, I got so much shit I could say about that, but I'm like, so it's
Mhm.
fun to kind of be in the position where I can talk about my experiences, because wrestlers will get this, all wrestlers and all martial artists, but definitely, um, if you've made it to the higher levels, if you've wrestled in college, and particularly Division 1, it's an ass kicking. But here's another underrated part of the sport, and there's all kinds of parallels for life and particularly business.
Mhm.
I'm gonna try to draw those parallels. You said something there that's really important, which is the preparation is where the real journey is. It's where the real test is.
Mhm.
What you're doing in the sport of wrestling and in business is you're building muscle memory. You are training and ingraining in the very organism that you are, to
Mhm.
where you pretty much black out,
Mm.
right? And for example, at this very moment, you and I will go through this podcast,
Mhm.
and we will kind of come to when we
Mhm.
conclude. And we're like, I don't even know what I said.
Right.
And then we'll go back and watch it and
Mhm.
listen to it and be like, damn, that was a good little soundbite, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
oh damn, I dropped a nug right
Mhm.
there. Like, I'd be like, damn, Christian was spitting fire on that one. And it's like, how'd you do that? Oh, it took me. How did you do that in an hour? How did you do that in wrestling 6-7 minutes? It's like, well, it
Right.
took me 36 years and then an hour, right? It was an overnight 36 years success,
Yeah.
37 years success, 38. So what people don't
Yeah.
realize is that you are a culmination up to that point.
Yeah.
It's the classic luck is when preparation meets opportunity,
Mhm.
right? And when you've prepared, you can seize that opportunity, and it will look like you're lucky,
Yeah.
but you're not lucky. That
You
didn't just
know it.
happen,
Right. People think you're lucky. They
right?
have no clue. Like, yeah, I know, bro. That is so powerful, man. That
So you
I didn't think
prepare
about
for the
that with go
moment.
ahead.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry,
Go
you
ahead.
just you got me fired up. You see, here's another thing I've been thinking about recently. I was talking to the
Mhm.
team about this. So people want momentum in their life, right?
Yeah.
But they don't break down the word. What's the main word? Moment,
Mhm.
right? You've got to prepare for that moment if you
Yeah.
ever want momentum. And most people are just umming, um, um, they're just
Mm.
aiming, aiming, aiming,
Mhm.
and they never
Mhm.
fire. You
Mhm.
fire, 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 aim, you course correct, you
Yeah.
do the thing, and you have the power. So
Mhm.
people always want to have all the resources before they do the thing. They want to have the power before they do the thing. But Ralph Waldo Emerson said, do the thing and you'll have the power, right? It's in the act
Byproduct.
of doing it that you
Yeah.
gain all the resources, infrastructure, connections, relationships. So, the other piece of the sport of wrestling that is underrated as far as like how hard it is,
Mhm.
think about this. And I played football, I played pretty much every other sport, team sport. You can transfer and disperse the blame pretty easily, right? You lose a football game, it's over an hour or two. There's
Mhm.
11 guys on the field on every play.
Mhm.
You can't quite peg it to one person. And even if the kicker misses the field goal, nobody's going to blame it on him entirely. Like that
Right.
that would be messed up, right?
Mhm.
It's like, hey, no, we all rise and fall together, which is a strength of the sport.
Yeah.
The weakness of the sport is that everybody leaves without taking extreme ownership.
Mhm.
When you're a wrestler, you ain't pointing at anyone other than yourself, and no one else is pointing at anyone other than the fact
Yeah.
that you lost that match.
Mhm.
You blew it up there. You dropped the ball. And you know how I know this? I am a two-time state finalist. Dude,
Mhm.
I lost my junior year of high school in the state finals. My senior year, I was ranked top in the country, already committed to Penn. The 6 seed upset the 2 seed. The kid was a scrub, and I lost to him
Mm.
and blew it. I was up, did a stupid thing, got stuck. The place went nuts. It was like the biggest upset ever. I know all about failure. I came out of that match. I was supposed to be my high school's first state champion. I'd already broken all the other records.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know if I even want to wrestle anymore. It took me
Mm-hmm.
weeks to even think about the sport. I went into a deep depression for
Mm-hmm.
like a month. And then I
Yeah.
went, wait, no, you got to plow forward. I'm convinced to this day, if I had won that match, I would not be the person I am because I got a taste of what it means to fail and have to
Mm.
plow through it and fail forward. And most people will avoid it because they don't want that feeling. That's a brutal feeling to get into that setting where you're on the big stage, you've got the lights, camera,
Mm-hmm.
action, and you fall flat on your face. It's
Yep.
really hard to come back from that.
One
So
hundred
that's part of
percent.
my journey too.
Yeah. Well, it has to be. It has to be because failure, you don't know who you are until after that. You are, who everyone else thinks you are.
Right.
You are who you think you might be, but you don't know until that test, man. That test of life, that test in that sport really, really defines, man, where you are, and I think, but again, too many people live for that stage because
Yep.
the stage is where people see you. The
It's
stage,
warm in the
people lust for that
limelight.
stage because that's where people are. You
Yep.
know, I think of even like Jesus's life. I see Jesus as a revolutionary.
Yeah,
That's how
man.
I see him.
Amen.
That's why he got killed. He didn't, he got killed because he was a revolutionary.
That's
But
right.
he spent 30 years in secret.
Mm.
30?
Yeah.
And he didn't just like suddenly become powerful at 30.
Right.
I mean, dude was powerful before. Could you imagine seeing stuff you could change and
Oh,
not
that's
being
good.
able to because you had to wait?
That's good.
Because you had to accept, you had to accept silence. Like, how many times did he want to step outside of silence, but it wasn't his time? He had to constrain his
Yep.
own power because it wasn't his time. That's one of the greatest lessons. Um, and I'll say this: I think when you look at him in such a religious way, you don't learn the lessons of his life.
That's good, man.
You know, but
Spot on.
that it's that secret place where you're being groomed and grounded to powder sometimes that really allow you to have a 3.5 year flawless run.
Right. Right.
But I'm sure those 30 years were tough, especially again, seeing stuff where it's like I could do something about that, but I can't. And you can't, and you better not, but people lust to be seen. And the lust to be seen is it's just you're not going to die right. You're not
Yeah.
going to die right. You're going to die with pride and ego on your shoulders, man.
Dude, you just dropped nugs on nugs, man. I'd love to speak a little to that.
Please, man,
Yeah,
please.
because that's right up my alley as far as my approach and my MO.
Yeah.
Um, I know you know this. There are 9 fruits of the spirit,
Hmm.
right? And interestingly enough, I'm one of 9 children. So we had, scriptures, and I grew up in a home where my parents are evangelical.
Hmm.
They are kind of master recruiters too, because
Hmm.
they were constantly sharing and witnessing and
Hmm.
expressing their faith. And they have had, and this is the part that I have a lot of love and respect for my parents, even amongst the challenging upbringing. They stayed very true to their calling
Hmm.
to share the gospel, to love on people. The only piece that I thought they just, you know, could have done, was,
Hmm.
why don't you get your oxygen mask on just a little
Hmm.
bit more? You don't have to go become wealthy or live the high life. So I grew up in an environment where if I came home and there was a drug addict having dinner with us that night and
Hmm.
possibly even like staying the night, that was not uncommon, which
Okay.
there were major issues with boundaries,
Hmm.
but I saw the heart of it. And God always protected, our family, but it was definitely like, come on, mom and dad, like you got to separate these things
Right.
a little better. So that is hardwired into who I am. I know what the lowest levels of society are like because we lived at like a poverty level,
Hmm.
and probably at like the top of poverty,
Mm-hmm.
because the people that had it like really bad, they
Mm-hmm.
sort of were looking up to us for hope and strength and
Mm.
perseverance. Um, so I say that to say that I have always wanted my work, my success to have an impact. There's never been a time where I thought I'm just going to fit my nest. It
Mm.
wasn't like the trauma of my upbringing made me want to go just create security.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could have joined the military. I could have just finished my degree and gotten a job on Wall Street. There's been a million ways that I could have fit my nest and taken care of me and got mine. But I never let go of the fact that I want what I do to impact people. I mean, the mission of our company is to be the world's most people centric company.
It's heavy. Mm.
It's heavy. It's a brutal. I'm like, damn, I don't know why I came up with that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I wish God hadn't given me that word.
Right. Right.
Like that's rough, right?
Right.
And that's an ideal, a North Star that is an infinite game. I mean, there's never going to be a time. I mean, you can barely measure it, right? I mean,
Right.
we arrive on that. No way. Our core values are walk by faith,
Mm-hmm.
lead with who, and measure what matters. So we
Mm.
have this ethos
Say
between
those
our,
again.
yeah, walk by faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you know the reference, walk by faith, not by
Mm-hmm.
sight. Lead with who, and measure what matters. I'll speak to each of them real quick because there's a nugget in all of them, I think, for your listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the verse does not say run by faith. It does
Mm.
not say sprint by faith. It also does not say crawl as faith,
I like it.
right? With faith or by faith. There's a walking out, which is a cadence, it's a rhythm, it's a pace. And sometimes, yeah, put a little pep in there, do some power walking. You know what I mean? Other times, maybe get a little swag with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
we're called to walk this thing out, this thing called life, this thing called fatherhood, marriage, leadership, fill in the blank. And you're not going to have tomorrow promised.
Mm-hmm.
Not promised as in you might not even be alive. And you also don't know the circumstances of tomorrow,
Mm.
right? We are going to face challenges. We are going to deal with the giants, but take heart. I've overcome the world, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you're a believer and you're part of the royal priesthood, you've already won. It is finished, right? The game's over. You're
Mm-hmm.
just walking this thing out until it's a wrap, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
when you do it in that context,
Mm-hmm.
the challenges of this world start to become almost futile,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You're like, oh, the bank called. The bank? You're worried about the bank? Like,
Right.
bro, look up, look around. Now be
Yeah.
prudent.
Yeah.
Take care of your shit. God's a God of order, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you put your things in order.
Yeah.
Leading with who is a philosophy of saying, I'm going to first and foremost lead with who I am as a believer. It's whose I am, right? It's who I am in Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and it's who I'm surrounding myself with.
Mm-hmm.
So, what people don't realize in brand building is that we don't live in a world anymore where it's just supply and demand.
Right.
We live in a world where we're choosing our communities.
Mm.
We're choosing the birds of a feather that flock together, but it's not the feathers, it's the core values. It's the in here that says, oh, I don't care what your race is, what
Yeah.
your background is, what your education is.
Mm-hmm.
We align on a core level and we're going to do this thing together, life, business,
Right.
ministry, fill in the blank. So that there's more on that, obviously. I'm about 75% done from completing the book Lead with Who that I'm writing. So I'll keep
Nice.
you abreast of that.
Please do.
Yeah. So, and then measure what matters, man. Cross T's, dot I's, get your shit together. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's something I wanted to share because you spoke to it a moment ago. Then back to you in the studio. Um, you have to be willing to go off the grid and develop
Yep.
and marinate and saturate. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you can microwave it, but that's you put a pot roast in the microwave, it's not the same as if it's been in the crock pot all day.
Yep.
You can open up a can of sauce or, jar of Prego. That's not the same as a sauce that's been, you know,
Mm-hmm.
developing all day.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want the output, you want it to taste and to be as rich and enriching and rewarding as you say it's going to be. Well, I loved your example there because God Himself, as Jesus, took 30 years and He stayed off the grid.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 3 years, He killed it. So you might say He had a 33-year overnight success, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't 3 years of a ministry. It was 33 years, and it was really alpha and omega, right? I mean, there was a
Yep.
timeless journey.
Yeah.
So that's where I think leading men particularly
Mm-hmm.
struggle with this, because if you were a star athlete, you killed the game, girls loved you, you were the life of the party,
Mm-hmm.
most of those people won't leave that limelight to go really develop. They just keep running the same play, work using their personality, using their natural faculties, using
Yeah.
that thing you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, hey, how's that going for you? And if you're just leaning on the same old shit. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah. Yeah.
leaning on
You
the
do.
same old playbook. And
Yeah.
that's where I think it's dangerous right now in
Mm-hmm.
our society, because men are able to put together a six-figure income pretty quickly. They can put together a business pretty quickly. You can pop up this, you can purchase that, you can acquire this, and you kind of just cobble together what
Mm-hmm.
looks like success, but that you didn't really come through that journey of refinement. You didn't really unbecome anything
Yep.
to become who you were meant to be in the first place.
Yep. And life will prove it. When the winds of life come, it will prove that you skip steps. And that's what I teach men so much on the podcast, even when I'm doing Dear Brother Lives in different places. That's one of my driving forces, man, is that life will prove that you were fronting the whole time. Like it will show you. Let me get into this, because I want to push forward into like my core and
Yeah,
all.
man.
God knows I had a ton of other stuff, man, I wanted to get into, but
We'll
look,
do another episode.
we
All
have
good.
to, bro.
Yeah.
Um, it's many men out there who are struggling to balance ambition
Mm,
with relationships. Um, how do you lead and you build
yeah.
with my core and your family? How do you do that without sacrificing people who matter?
Yeah, man. And when you say there's many men, I'm one of those men, you know,
Okay.
many, many men. It reminds me of the 50
Mm-hmm.
Cent song.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Wish death upon me. Yeah, I'm one of those men. Let
Yeah.
me give you an example. So I was with a uh, gentleman who God has put this guy in my life as of late, and it's like uncanny. He actually came across some of my content on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
reached out and said, "Hey man, I really dig your style. I'm in Jacksonville as well. We should talk." And over the past couple months, we've been on this journey of him coming on board. He actually is now our chief strategy officer, and I'm thinking I may make him the president of the company
Wow.
so that I can do more of this and have
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
really run it internally.
Mm-hmm.
He's really qualified. He's uh, built some great companies, exited them, and I was with him yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
We were working, and it was like 4:15, you know. And in my mind, I'm like, I got another, hour. Then I'll get home by like 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting dark a little later, Like
Mm-hmm.
my daughter texts me and says, "Hey, I want to go to this art night at my school. It starts at 5. Um, and they're going to be displaying some of my art from my art class, and some of my friends are going to be there." And I'm looking at the phone, and we're like in the middle of a conversation. I'm like, these are those moments, man. Like, these are the moments where you have to choose your family. because I could have easily blown it off because she didn't really give me the proper, or my wife, the proper runway for it, right? Like nobody would have judged me. I probably wouldn't even have judged myself. You know what I mean? I'd been like, honey, you got to give us more time than that. Like I'm at the office. And I just made a decision in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, Ned, I got to go. I was like, we're going to pick this up tomorrow.
Yep.
I said, I'm rushing home and I'm going to take my daughter to this.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter's 11. She'll be 12 next week. And my other daughter, Rosie, so that's Amelia. Rosie is 9.
Mm-hmm.
And she jumped in. We went. And we had a great evening. I mean, we went and watched this little like performance because it was like these kind of different pockets within the school. They had like band over here and theater over there and art over there. It was like art night. And
Okay.
then we went to Chick-fil-A and I just had this amazing time with them
Yeah.
for 2 or 3 hours. And I mean, I could get emotional thinking about it because I've been on such a grind that I went like, damn, I've got to do that more, man. Like that, this is a moment in time where they're going to go from being 12 and 10 to 14 and 12 and then
Yeah.
it's over. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Quick.
it's hard, man. So I think
Mm-hmm.
the nugget I would give, and I'm saying this to myself,
Mm-hmm.
and look, for those of you out there that have figured it out, like hit me up, man. Send me the formula, like at me, bro. Like, but for the rest of us, I think it's about being conscientious in those moments and seizing them and saying, like, yes, like, let's do it right now.
Yeah.
So versus trying to plot out some perfect life balance. I don't know that that's realistic if you're really trying to build something significant.
Yeah.
And here's the irony. There's 2
Mm-hmm.
types of businesses. And I'm talking business here. That's kind of my context.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure it could be applied to career
Mm-hmm.
if you're not a business owner. But there's 2 types of businesses. And I ask people this all the time. I say, is this a lifestyle business or is this a legacy business?
Mm.
Because if you're building a lifestyle business, well, then good on you. You know, this is something that's going to afford you balance. It's going to allow you to have freedom, and you don't have to build it that big. You don't have to
Yeah.
build it that deep. I mean, it's got to make 400 grand a year, 150 to 200 in expenses. You pay
Mm-hmm.
yourself $250,000. You're living. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's not that hard to do in
Mm-hmm.
the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
What's really hard to do is to build a brand and a team and all the things that make it so that you can keep that business for 30 years,
Yeah.
40 years, and then
Yep.
pass it on to junior or
Yeah.
keep it in the family for
Mm-hmm.
another 40 or 30 years.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, the irony is that I was handed a pretty shitty set of cards growing up,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to transcend from poverty, which is a mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's also a construct.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive to be broke, right? So
Yes,
if you're
it
dealing
is.
with bad credit, you're dealing with having no resources. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it is a fight to get out of that world. And I have fought hard to
Yeah.
beat that system. And that's regardless of race. I mean, that is just a
Mm-hmm.
economic beatdown
Yep.
that you will get if you come from poverty.
Yep.
So to create legacy wealth and generational wealth, there's some sacrifices. And I mean that like it's a sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of it too, man, is I recognize I'm sober to the fact that I don't have the balance that I desire
Mm.
because of I'm paying a price that my father did not pay.
Okay. So let me throw something in. I think I've learned a little bit about
Yeah,
this balance
you
thing.
help me.
Bro, listen, I've gone through hell to figure what I figured something out. I started teaching at 14, like biblically. I started teaching at 14.
Amen.
I was on the road by the time I was 17. So I was playing high school football on a Friday night, and then my mom handed me a suit. I'm taking a shower. I'm going to teach somewhere.
Dude, that's amazing.
And like, I would fly out on the weekend, be back at school by Monday, those sort of things.
Wow.
Which eventually took me around the world, all around the world, teaching the gospel, teaching leadership and all these things while my kids were growing up.
Wow.
Mom was sick, so she couldn't, she had to stay home. And then I had to get people to help her because she was sick with the babies. And once I got older, I started thinking like, and it was a tough balance, Nate, because I had to say, well, I had to do it because I had to pay for everything.
Right.
But what did I miss
Mhm.
while I was out there? While I'm across the world. I'm in Australia. I'm in, Zimbabwe and Germany. But it's like, what did I miss though? Like those moments. And sometimes it's like you see a little videotape. My twins are 18 now, and my son is 20. But I'll see like a little videotape when Hannah or Morgan was dancing on the thing and on their mom's phone. And it's like, where the hell was I at?
Right, right, right.
You know? Um, and again, I can't count myself as wrong or we wouldn't be able to eat. But it's like, why did I miss that? Once I retired, bro, and I really sat down and thought, like, there's no such thing as balance.
No.
Now, I know a lot of people have made a lot of money on writing books about work-life balance, but I think it's BS.
You and I have this in common, by the way. I only believe in counterbalance. So we're totally on
Yeah,
the
bro.
same page.
Because ultimately, you don't balance anything when you're driving a car. You go get all the fuel you need to get where you're going.
Yep.
What I've learned is that it's the kids' laughter,
Yeah.
it's the woman's laughter, it's the hugs, it's the kisses that give you the fuel to go do something.
Yes.
And then you come back and fuel right back up. It's
Yes.
not it's
Yes.
not anything else. There's no such thing as balance. Because if you need enough to do all this stuff. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so
You're killing it right now, man. You're spot on because
y-
people get real. This is tapping back into what I was saying earlier, where it's like, be careful. And I'm not saying like wolves in sheep's clothing
mhm,
necessarily, but a lot
mhm.
of people have gotten the topsoil of wisdom,
Yeah.
right? Just that good, nice, rich soil that's dark and moist and full of
Mhm.
moisture. And they've made a career on selling that bullshit. And there's a bedrock, there's clay, there's muck and mire that
Yes.
you have to go through to really understand
Yes.
what it takes to become this person
Yes.
and to unbecome this person. And what
Yes.
I think you're saying there is under the surface, right? Because a lot of people will sell you on this balanced life because it's, well, enticing, it's intriguing, and it sounds like
And it's marketable.
it's marketable, it's packageable, you can sell it, right?
Right.
But the reality of it is you're constantly making a choice. And I wish I could show it to you, but right above me there's two flags. There's the pennant,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then there's a flag that is um, navy white or navy white, navy blue and white.
Mhm.
Okay. And that actually is becoming, or it is the logo for the Lead with Who book. So our
Mhm.
shield, like this shield, the MyCore shield,
Mhm.
it's a different version of that.
Okay.
It's just the the white and blue. Why do I say that? Because it is derived from signal flags, which if you look at like sailing and
Mhm.
the old ships, they would use flags, right, to
Mhm.
communicate to each other before they had radios and telecom. So like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. Well, the letter N is November, which the root of that word is no, and it's
Mhm.
a checkered flag, white and navy blue. And
Mhm.
what that flag communicates is no, negative. So if one ship was like, "Hey, are we clear to go?" The other ship would say, "No, negative, like stand by." I chose that as a image
Mhm.
and an illustration of the Lead with Who book and the Lead
Mhm.
with Who philosophy
Mhm.
because I believe that we are who we are, not by the things that we've said yes to, but the things that we've said no to, right? Because
Yes.
every time we say yes to something, we are saying no to everything else. And if we start thinking that way, it's like, okay, I didn't say yes to being fit. I said no to eating shit, right? Like
Right.
I didn't say yes to this podcast. I said no to what I would be doing during this time. And
Right.
now you get this sort of sobriety, this really like keen thinking that goes, well, damn, I
Mhm.
can't do it all. I can't balance it all. So what am I saying no to?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
I'm really conscientious about the things that I say no to, and I think people don't make the shift because early on in their career they say yes, yes, yes to everything. Yes to the appointment, yes
Yep.
to the interview, yes to the sale, yes to the employee that they want
Hmm.
because they just want their first hire.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
ultimately, you end up in this position where you've got very limited margin,
Yep.
and you got to get really good at saying, no, we're not doing that. No, we're not going in that direction. No, we're not
Hmm.
hiring that person. No, we're not taking that capital. So
Yeah.
anyway, I just thought that you'd appreciate that
Yes.
because that's exactly what you're saying there, I think.
That's exactly it, man. Because, and you know, I teach people how to take your life back one no at a time.
Mm,
That's how you
let's
recover
go.
your life one no at a time. I thought about my funeral one day, and with all this traveling, I said, when you're a public person and you've been all around, see people hear you die, people come, and it's a big thing, right? And I thought about this one day. I said the last thing I ever want is to have people fly in from around the world because I die, and my children are standing over my casket saying, "I didn't even know that guy," or the
Right.
people in the audience have a better story about me than my kids do.
Mm,
And that's when it really hit me one day. Nope,
yep.
no way. It's no way I want people to say, and your dad did this for me, and your dad did that for me. And my son and my daughters are like, well, yeah, all he did was kind of make sure we went to school. It's like, no, hell no. That is a curse. That is a curse for me. And I decided nothing is before them. I did what I had to do. I'm like on my second life now. And you know how I started my second life with my kids?
Mm,
I wasn't bad to them, but I felt like I could have been better to them by not,
yeah.
not being on the road so much. I started off by apologizing, man. I came to them and said, you know what? I'm sorry. And I want to say that to some dads out there.
It's good.
The greatest thing you could do as a man or as a father is to go apologize to people that
Mm,
you hurt with your activity, even if it wasn't intentional. Go to your kids, man, and teach them the vulnerability. You'll make them better parents. You'll make them better mothers, better fathers. You'll make them better people by knowing, hey, my dad said, I'm sorry. Let me get into this last question for you,
yeah, for sure.
even though I got 27
That's
minutes.
good stuff, dude. I'm you're speaking to me, man. And I think just one thought on that. I mentioned the word sacrifice. I think when we're in the thick of it, we know the sacrifices that we've made,
Mhm.
and it's important to acknowledge the sacrifices that the people closest to us have made, right? Our spouses, our children.
Yeah.
And I like that you can go apologize and say, hey, I know the sacrifice that you've had to make
Hmm.
for me to be this person, for me
Hmm.
to do this thing. So I think that's a really healthy. I'm thinking on that, going, how do I communicate that? So yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
that.
It's important, man, because it only matters in the end. Like, you know, they're the only thing that matters. Like that was your
Right,
real team.
right,
I don't care if you
right.
give a damn who we hired, who
Yep.
was great for us, who
Yep.
made the company another $1 million. If your daughter says, I didn't know my dad, bro, who
Right.
cares, man? It doesn't
Right.
matter. And then ultimately, we can't expect our daughters to how do they go pick a man?
Right.
They go pick a man that ignored them like we did? No, 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 no. I go pick a man who's humble enough to say I'm sorry, who's humble enough to say no to something to be with me. It's big. Let me get here for you. If guys out there right now are feeling lost, right? Unsure of what they stand for, unsure what's going on, unsure where they're going. How does that man begin defining his core values?
Hmm. Yeah, it's important. So important. I went through a journey, a soul search. Um, I've kind of been saying it, and I think people have probably seen this go around. It was actually Jordan Burroughs, who's an Olympic champion, that I saw post this. Oh, I don't know. It was probably almost 10 years ago now.
Hmm.
We were the same age. We don't know each other personally, but he now is at the PRTC, which is the Pennsylvania Regional Training Center for wrestling, and they wrestle and train out of the University of Pennsylvania's wrestling room there, right in Philly. And uh, he posted this in like 2015 or something on Facebook, and it was a moment in time where um, I was in a bad place, and I'll give you a little insight on that. my wife and I married, had 2 children, divorced, full blown divorce, not just separated, like lived separate lives. We got back together, reconciled,
Hmm.
and we got remarried on what would have been our 10-year anniversary.
Wow.
And we had 2 more children. So we have 4 together biologically. And then Gavin, my stepson, is from her first marriage. So we have 5 children in our home,
Hmm.
4 together biologically. There's a lot more to that story. That's a whole nother podcast, another day. But it's definitely a story of forgiveness and grace and marriage and God and ultimately how awesome she is. Um, it was 2015. I was in the middle of that divorce and in the middle of what was really um, a faith crisis too, because all that self-reliance that I had built that got me through my adolescence, through my teenage years, into my 20s, had come to a halt at about 25 years old
Hmm.
when I got to the end of myself. And here's what I think people don't realize is that you can do it on your own
Hmm.
for a while. Like you can get pretty damn far actually on your own, but you will hit a wall eventually. And I did at 25 years old, where all my perfectionism, all my trauma that led to what my mother used to call me was, still does, a rebel with a cause. So
Hmm.
I rebelled in constructive ways. I rebelled in, but I overcorrected. I mean, I became psychotic about my grades and about my business and about all the things. And it came to a screeching halt. I had an encounter with God. It was interesting too, and I know you'll appreciate this because God's a custom dude, man. He's a custom fit, tailored, bespoke guy. He will meet us right where we're at, and
Hmm.
we'll know it's him because it will be so unique to us. I went to a church, and this was a church I grew up in, and this pastor, Pastor Butts, this is an all black church,
Hmm.
which if you know that church, that's a different kind of church. That's like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., right? There's like a talent show that meets, a family reunion meets a cookout,
Hmm.
meets a church, right?
Hmm.
So I go back home to that church and I go up to the front of the room and I was a believer, but I was not doing well in my faith walk. And I got bear hugged by Pastor Buds. He's a big dude. And we wrestled, bro.
Hmm.
I wrestled the pastor to the point where I think they thought that we were like, I had attacked him. But he was so filled of the Holy Spirit
Hmm.
that he knew, because I came up looking like an absolute wreck. He goes to hug me and I start grappling with him,
Hmm.
which was in this weird way, like grappling with God. It's kind of hard to
Hmm.
explain,
I
but
get
I'm
it.
in this like wrestle of like, if you're real, if you say who you say you are, I need you right now. Like,
Hmm.
come on. And dude, boom, I just dropped to the ground. Like it was just like classic, like Jacob wrestling God. I don't have a limp now. My hip's fine. But, but it was one of those moments where I just hit the ground. I think I was
Yeah.
down there for an hour or two. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Just
Yeah. Yeah.
on my face. So that was that season of my life. And then I see Jordan Burroughs post this thing that says, hey, the journey is not so much about becoming anything or anyone, but unbecoming all the things that aren't you so you can
Hmm.
be who you were meant to be in the
Hmm.
first place.
Hmm.
Right. And I snagged that and I like went, I got to figure that one out. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like I got to
Yep.
unbecome the Ivy Leaguer,
Yeah.
unbecome the Division 1 athlete, unbecome the perfect family with the beautiful blonde and the beautiful
Hmm.
kids, unbecome the entre. I'm like, how do I get stripped down
Yep.
to my core? And that was a really brutal journey, man. From 25 to 30
Hmm.
was about that season. I kind of got back on my feet and
Hmm.
knew who I was
Yeah.
at 30. You're always still figuring that out. But
Yep.
to answer your question, and I kind of just try to weave that into that
Hmm.
life story, is it's not a quote here or a philosophy there.
Hmm.
You got to battle test.
Hmm.
You got to rattle the cage you got to do a shakedown of that value and say, is it really who I am? And if so, hang that thing on the wall, tattoo it on your heart, maybe tattoo it on your body if you already have tattoos,
Hmm.
and get real serious about it. So when I
Yeah.
look at my life, it's not just my core's values. I do walk by faith. I do lead with who, and I do measure what matters. And that keeps
Hmm.
me grounded. And I would encourage people to try to find 3 values
Hmm.
and don't just, get some cheesy ones. Like really find ones that have um, a, a depth to them, and make sure that they're a blend and a balance, just like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There's a
Hmm.
reason why the Trinity is unique, right? That the Father God is different than the Father Son, which is different than the Helper. They're 3 in 1, right? But they sort of create this checks and balances in
Hmm.
this whole thing.
Yep.
So I would encourage people to get 3, not 17, like 3, maybe 4, but more than one, a couple, more than a couple, to see, are these things balancing each other out? Or am I creating a trinity, a trifecta between them? And are they keeping me centered? Are they
Hmm.
keeping me grounded? And are they filters that I can make decisions through? So
Yeah.
that's how I've come up with my core values.
Yeah.
And it's helped me kind of keep going forward in a proper way.
Yeah. And you said something really important about finding out really who you are by stripping the other stuff away. And I think that's really the discovery process. It's like here we are as us, and then we add on these degrees and these things, and we
Right.
begin to believe it's us. But
Right.
really, like it's like when you start taking layer off a layer off a layer, that's where you are. I got a question I'm gonna start asking at the end of all my interviews. You are my 4th interview, but I'm going to
Awesome.
start it with you. This is how
Amen.
we'll end today.
Cool.
I call it the question of legacy beyond.
Mm.
If everything you built disappeared tomorrow, what's the one thing you want to be remembered for?
Mm. That's a great question, man. I'm going to say my faith. Yeah. I think not because maybe there's a special place in heaven or like a gold star you get for saying that publicly or something,
Oh, I get it.
but a genuine, but the institution of faith. People uh, commingle the word faith with religion. That's not what faith is. That's like saying my bicep, is a institution of muscle. It's like, no, that's an actual muscle. Like it's
Right.
living and breathing. And if you don't work it, it's going to atrophy. And if
Hmm.
you do build it, it will strengthen.
Yeah.
So if you stripped everything away, and I've had it stripped away,
Me
and
too.
and I kind of live, I'm like a minimalist to this day, dude. Like this shirt, bro,
Hmm.
I got at Walmart like 7 years ago. It's my favorite shirt.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I stole it from my brother who got it at Walmart. Now that I think about it, I only know it's from Walmart, but I stole it from Micah, and I was like, "This shirt's sick, dude." And I'm like, what's funny? This has got like this kind of vintage look. I'm like, people spend like $200 for something like
Easy.
this. So I'm somebody that already operates on a minimalistic sort of mindset,
Hmm.
and I only say that to say that I care most about whether I'm encouraging people, inspiring people, and probably even more than that, challenging people to wrestle with faith.
Hmm.
Because it is a grapple, it is a battle, and you cannot label it and say, I'm a Christian, done, check. It's like, nah, dog. Like you are going to be in the battle of your life
Yeah.
to believe that he really is who he says he is,
Yep.
and he will show up. And I can barely say it. I get emotional
Hmm.
just because of the sovereignty of it, the reverence for it. So my faith, man, because I would hope that if I drop dead right now, people would go, yeah, man, he kept walking it out, like walked
Hmm.
it out in business, walked it out in parenthood, walked it out in fatherhood. He was trying his ass off,
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
keep the main thing the main thing.
Yes, sir. Nathan Bourne, brilliant brother.
Dude, right
Thank
back
you
at
so
you,
much,
man.
man,
Thank you.
for taking time to spend on the Dear Brother podcast, man. I am really appreciative of you, your story, man, your experiences, and thank you for sharing, man. Thank you for being so open, vulnerable, man. Thank you for riding with my questions that made you sit back on the couch and think a little bit, man.
Right. I was like,
Sometimes it's good to
yeah.
not be in the lead, you know. Sometimes it's good. You find out how much of a leader you are when you can sit back and pour. It's a
Yeah.
difference between sometimes leading the charge and sitting back and pouring. Both of them are leaders, but they're two different approaches. And I think we got the pour out of you today. And I'm so thankful for that, man. Thank you for this time, bro. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, man. You're a special guy, man. God's really blessed you with abilities that um I it takes one to know one kind of thing,
Yes, sir.
but your ability to not read between the lines, but to just really tease out and pluck out what's really going on. That's special, man. I'm glad God's pushing you into this platform to be podcasting, to be content creating. I was looking at your videos this morning, just trying to get a feel for who you are,
Hmm.
and I had already added you and kind of just been preparing my my thoughts a little bit for our time together. But
Hmm.
you shocked me, man. So I'm humbled to have spent this time with you. I have a feeling we're going to be talking more. I'd love to have you on our podcast if we could flip the script a little and keep the convo going.
Yeah, so I could sit back and you can be the doctor, bro, and get past the who I think I am. Who do I think I am? Nate to
Right,
find out.
right,
I
dear
will be honored.
brother.
Yeah, bro. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to it, man.
awesome, man. God bless
Thanks
you.
again, brother. Enjoy your day, man.
You too.
All right, bro.
See you, man.
All right. Well, dear brothers, thank you so much for hanging out with me and Nate today. I hope you were super duper duper blessed, man, by the conversation. He's a great guy. Make sure you look podcast, man. Look out for Nathan Bourne, bro. His words, his book is coming out. It'll change your life, man. Stick and stay, man. I'm bringing some great guys on here, but Nate was a special podcast, man. You look into him. Look, I can't wait till his book comes out. When it comes out, I'll make sure I advertise it to you all, man. And look out for what he's doing, man. Especially you guys who are looking to get your core values together. Look him up, man. I will put all his information in the description. When this drops, it should be dropping maybe, man. I think I'm gonna drop it this weekend, probably by Sunday. But look out for him, man. I'll put everything that I need to in the description. You'll be able to contact Nate, get in touch with him. But man, thank you for hanging out. Thank all the new subscribers, man. I couldn't believe we're at over 1,500. I remember we had 1 and 2 and 10, and I was happy then. But man, thank you so much, man. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, become part of this community where grown men grow even more. Hey man, I love you. Make sure you love you. That's more important. Live this life out with no fear, no shame, and no compromise. If this is your first time, you're hearing it for the first time, join in. If you've been here, you know it. This is how we end every podcast. Yesterday was history, and tomorrow's a mystery. All we got is right now, my man. What you gonna do with it? What you gonna do about it? Hey, man, stand tall. Until next time. Peace.